I was pretty surprised at Quadruple UDC this year because I knew there was a chance Apple would be announcing the transition from Intel to their own custom processors, but I was not anticipating it to be almost carbon cut copied from the PowerPC to Intel transition, straight up with the Mac Mini Dev Kit, Tim Cook announcing a historic change to the Mac, and the fact that they want to get all the Macs in the lineup over to Apple-made silicon within 2 years. That's insanity, and it puts us in a very weird place today. So without further ado, should you buy any Mac with an Intel processor? Let's begin. So I've talked about this before, but I was kind of in the market for a Mac this year. I was thinking about getting the updated 16-inch MacBook Pro whenever they refreshed that. I've had my iMac Pro for about 3 years now, and it's still running fine, but I just wanted to get an additional machine that was a bit more up-to-date with more recent specs, as it feels like the iMac Pro is not getting anything, and there's been a lot of cool hardware that's come out in more recent Apple history that I was excited to try out and just use for my own workflow so that I can put it somewhere else, or once I found out about the updated iMac design that could be unveiled at the event. Obviously it wasn't, but lots of leakers are still saying that iMac is coming, just not yet. For a while I was really excited to see an updated iMac design just for the sake of aesthetics and it looking like an iPad Pro. I was kind of putting my targets on that. If it came out and the price was good, I probably would have got that thing, but I was not anticipating that in today's climate, with Apple as big as they are and with lineups ranging from, $900 MacBook Air as well as $50,000 Mac Pro, I just didn't see it possible that Apple could do the same transition they did a few years back, given the most expensive Macs Apple made back when they did the PowerPC to Intel switch were the equivalent of like less than $5,000 today. So selling $50,000 machines and then like 6 months into the Mac Pro's release cycle to announce, oh yeah, we're gonna be switching away from Intel over the next 2 years. Bye! Makes you wonder what's the future of all today's Intel Macs, right? I mean, Tim Cook talked about at the developer conference the fact that they still plan on providing software updates for the Intel machines. They're not just cutting them all off. And he even said they have some more Intel Macs in the pipeline that are supposed to come out by the end of this year. And I think that will be the redesigned iMac, which, now that I find out that my dream iMac that could be coming true and everyone loves the design of will also be rocking an Intel processor on the first generation, I feel my heart crack, because I'm all on board the Apple Silicon train, all right? I don't use Boot Camp, I don't use Windows. Most of the apps I use on my Mac are first party and from the Mac App Store anyway, so I don't care about compatibility. I am all on board switching to Apple machines because the first benchmarks we've seen from the Mac Mini Dev Kit that people have been testing have showcased really promising results, and that's taking an A12Z chip and putting it in like the most basic Mac ever. The A12Z chip is practically 2 years old because it's very, very similar to the A12X, which came out in 2018, and I'm sure when the first Apple Silicon Macs actually start shipping, which should be later this year, Tim actually confirmed that, it's no longer speculation, it's happening, that's going to be its own branded class of Apple Silicon, which is going to far outperform the A12Z chip, which is already pretty impressive. And now imagining the family of processors Apple's going to make for the MacBooks and the higher end MacBooks and the iMacs, and eventually, I'm pretty sure this is how it works, they will have to release Apple Silicon within the Mac Pro in less than 2 years. I mean, Apple also said the transition from PowerPC to Intel would take around 2 years, but they had basically converted the whole lineup in about 1 year. So they move quick on this stuff, and I imagine in 2021, we could see the majority of the Mac lineup be switching over to Apple Silicon for good. And honestly, I think Apple might get a little bit of the Osborne effect from that, which means that your current announcement prevents people from buying today's machines because they're so excited for the next generation machines. Like, current rumors coming from Ming-Chi Kuo are suggesting that the first ARM MacBook is going to be a 13-inch MacBook Pro, right? Which is like, we don't have enough of those already. We already got the one with 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports with the 10th generation Intel processors, but we still got the old MacBook Pros with the 8th generation Intel processors and 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports. Which one does the ARM MacBook replace? Does it go alongside all of them? Does it have an updated design? We don't know these things, and because we don't know these things, it's very hard to recommend anyone to buy those things. I mean, sure, the processors on them are decent, and if it suits your needs, I guess go ahead and buy it, but at the same time, it's like, man, if you can wait, really do try to wait, because if it's true that Apple's going to be transitioning every Mac in the lineup over to vastly superior, way faster processors built in-house, and also, not to mention macOS Big Sur is way more backwards compatible than we were expecting. I was not anticipating Apple to be the type of company to emulate x86 apps on their ARM architecture, and yet they are. They're like, oh yeah, any app that ran on the old Macs will also run on these. So I thought there would be some kind of software issue with Apple switching over to Apple Silicon and emulating things, and that wasn't really Apple's style. But nope, they're okay with doing it, and the early test results showcase that Apple's able to emulate stuff pretty well, and they're letting developers know to optimize their apps, and that transition I think is going to go real smoothly. So in other words, if you're planning on buying a Mac and you want to have it for the long haul, you want to hang on to it for 3, 5, 7 years, it will definitely be a better idea to wait as long as you can right now, because it sounds like Intel processors we're using today are going to be overheating and not great performance, and Apple Silicon could move towards more fanless Macs, which means more quiet operation while still gaining like incredible performance. And it's possible we're going to see new MacBooks of all sizes and potentially new iMacs within the year running Apple Silicon that could be running much quieter, or maybe no fans at all. Like the MacBook Air probably won't need fans if it's running Apple Silicon. Maybe the 13-inch MacBook Pro won't need any, and that could result in a much sleeker, very good battery life on a Mac. And this whole announcement of the transition away from Intel has made me hesitant to buy any Mac with an Intel processor, because I feel like it's going to be dated and probably kind of obsolete within the next year or two. But I'm sure you're still going to be getting operating system upgrades. Yes, Apple will continue to send software support to the Intel Macs for years to come, because there is just no way Apple would sell the Mac Pro for $50,000 and then after like a couple of years of it being out saying like, you better switch to Apple Silicon, you can't use it anymore. And I highly doubt Apple will let you add Apple Silicon to the Mac Pro via aftermarket accessory. I don't think it's that simple. So personally, I still think it's safe to assume that Apple is going to continue to provide software updates to older Macs for many years to come, but the generation of those Macs is going to be older and older and older, because again, within the next year or two, we're not going to have any more Intel Macs in the entire lineup. So this does mean probably the slow and inevitable death of Hackintoshes, because you'll only be able to get versions of macOS that work on older generations of hardware. So upgrading your old hardware is going to get harder and harder. And obviously in the long run, eventually Apple will just have complete control and say all versions of macOS will now require Apple Silicon, but I would still say that's a good 4 to 5 years from now. But given we should be getting a lot of hardware whatever the next Apple event is coming next, I would at least encourage you to wait for that, because in my opinion, this updated 13-inch MacBook Pro, we don't know what it's going to cost, we don't know what the performance is going to be on it, but I'm guessing some type of, A14X type performance, and it's going to crush the competition, and it'll still run silently, and maybe have some new design language people appreciate and that kind of thing. So at least wait for the next Apple event to see what these processors have in store and how much substantially better they are than Intel. And until then, yeah, sit tight. I'm very much sorry for those of you who are in the market for a Mac, and Apple basically just made their entire lineup seem unappealing, and I'm in that same department too. So if an Intel redesigned iMac comes out, I'm gonna be like, you're beautiful, but I gotta wait for the Apple Silicon version, because I'm gonna hold on to that thing for a long time. So I wanna make sure that it has, best performance available. But let me know what you guys are thinking by hitting me up over on Twitter, join my Discord. Do you think it's a bad idea to buy any Mac with an Intel CPU right now, or are they still gonna get several more years of support? So, just go ahead and pull the trigger. Feel free to let me know. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you guys in the next one.